Well, I was able to harvest a buck that was bedded in the switchgrass this year, which was very fun to see with all the work that we put into this area. Actually, my son was with me, and it was definitely a very enjoyable hunt. So today I want to take some time just to kind of talk about that hunt and just talk about switchgrass bedding in general. I also took some drone footage. First time ever flying this drone, so it's probably not the best footage, but it'll give you a good bird's eye view of what this area looks like and how we set up the switchgrass bedding in this area. So I'm excited to show you. So this was our view. See the big swath of switchgrass out there. Our buck was bedded right over that direction, kind of right up in one of those dark pockets. And we ended up shooting him right up on the other side of that low spot right there. Actually, no, I think the shot was right there in one of those dark pockets. So we got to see him get up right over there, and he cut right through the switchgrass this direction. We have a food plot down there in this stand, and we have a food plot right behind us. We access right up on that screen or tree line over there, and we actually were probably within 80 yards of where that buck was bedded, but I have switchgrass going around the exterior of this whole thing, a really thick swath of switchgrass that I know the deer won't bed in. So the deer never got up, and it was a northwest wind, so our wind was blowing clean when we accessed the stand. All right, so here's the whole switchgrass area. So this area actually used to be CRP, and it was converted into pockets of switchgrass and some early successional growth here a few years ago. From this 200-foot view, you can really see that pocket effect that I'm going for with the switchgrass. You can tell it is not pure, thick, rank switchgrass. Now, if you're looking at it from the side, it looks like it's thick switchgrass, but this video does a really good job of showing you all those different pockets that I want to have when I'm planting switchgrass for deer bedding. These pockets also allow for those herbaceous species to pop that make good fawning and brood rearing cover. I've kicked out several fawns and turkey poults from this area when I'm walking in this area in June. So as this area continues to add in that herbaceous cover and add in that woody cover, it's just going to continue to get better and better every single year and be more and more appealing to wildlife. In that large open space in the middle, I'll be planting some conifers and shrubs. And there you can see the deer stand that we were sitting in. It's a nice view from the hilltop, and we were able to look right down into the bedding area and see that buck get up. All right, now I'm fairly certain he was bedded somewhere right in this area. You can see why he'd want to bed here. I've talked about this. When you're doing switchgrass for bedding, you need to leave these open pockets. This area is probably 25-30 acres. If I would have done a straight up monoculture of switch in the entire thing, I do not think that I would get deer bedding here. But I leave these open pockets because I want to create diversity within the switchgrass. So these pockets are here because eventually that successional growth will start popping here. I'm also going to add in some shrubs. I'm going to add in some conifers because I want as much diversity as possible in here. But where did the deer bed? You can see right there, there's an impression that looks like a deer bed. The deer like to bed up next to the switch. So you need the switch to be thick enough for it to provide that structure that the deer's looking for in the bedding, but you don't want an entire area of thick, rank switchgrass. Here's a better example of a bed. This one looks like it's been used quite a bit. Very, very good impression. Again, right up next to the switchgrass. So if the deer's bedded here, here's his view. So he doesn't feel like he's boxed in. Eventually there's going to be some browse. and some diversity so that he has food in his bedding area. And you can see when he stands up, right up there on the hill is the deer stand. So when we're sitting up above the switchgrass, we can look into it and we can actually watch them get up out of their bed. I even double checked it. You can see there's some hair right there that was in this bed. So this is a well-used bed for sure. Great backstop with the switchgrass. I have larger open spots like this. Again, these spots are meant for some of that early successional growth. You got to kill this grass out of here. It's on the to-do list because I want to release that seed bed, but I also plan on adding in some shrubs and conifers out here just to get some diversity and some more structure. In the thick switchgrass like this, I just find very few beds. So you don't need a whole lot of depth to your switchgrass. You want strips and pockets. You know, right here here's an open pocket where I'd expect some bedding. You go about 5 yards, and you hit another pocket like this. Again, another spot where they'll bed up next to the switchgrass. So if you're going for bedding with your switchgrass, and let's say you don't get a great first year take on your switchgrass, that's probably actually perfect. If you seeded the whole area and half of it came up, that's what you're looking for with your switchgrass bedding. I mean, I've been staring at this stuff for quite a few years now and trying to fine-tune how to utilize switchgrass as a deer habitat tool. And the more I see with it, the more I notice that thick, pure switchgrass does not have deer bed in it. The deer bed up next to it. So again, it's that balance of you want it to be, you can see they're over here. It's that balance of you want it to be thick enough so that it provides that structure for them to bed up against, but you don't want it to be, 20, 30 acres of pure switchgrass. So going all the way around this bedding area, I have one probably 10-yard wide screening strip of switchgrass. And it goes all the way around because we access, like I said, down that tree line. So far in the few, I think we're at year 3 or 4 for this area, we haven't bumped a deer on our entrance, but they do tend to really like to bed right up in this area. So we get fairly close, so we got to make sure that we're accessing on a northwest wind. But that is our best access for this area, and it's worked really well. So thick switchgrass going all the way up, all the way around it, and I haven't had any deer bedding up next to the screen yet, so it's worked really well. So here's an area that I've done a pretty good job of killing the grass in. I sprayed it again this year, just trying to release that seed bed. But I do plan on the one tree that I'm going to plant out here this year is I'll do two trees, some white pine and some white spruce, just to add a little bit more of a thermal component to this area. And like I've said with tree planting before, the best thing you can do is kill the grass, because that grass acts like a sponge, and on a dry year it's tough having the trees competing with that cool season grass. So I've been at it, I've been killing it. There's been a lot of broadleaf plants that have been popping, some thistle of course, but I stay on top of the thistle, and I'll be adding a lot of trees right here and up in that open pocket right there. And then eventually I'll start adding some shrubs as well. The tough thing about shrubs is in our area we got to protect them, because in the winter the deer just hammer them. But I want as much diversity out in this area as possible. I feel like each year this area is just going to keep getting better and better. So when I'm talking about these pockets for early successional growth, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I want. So here's a little spot that has somehow made it past the deer. You can see I got switchgrass all the way around it. And here I got the woody stems. So the woody stems act as food, And when the leaves are on, they also like to bed right up in areas like this. So this is what I'm going for in all those other spots that I left open. Here it's just a bunch of box elder. I'd like it a little bit thicker, of course, but over time it will thicken. This is what we want. We want a good blend of diverse native species along with that switchgrass for bedding structure. Now check out that massive bed. This looks like a buck bed. Getting a little bit close to the stand right here. You can see the stand right up right there. It would make sense a buck wants a bed here because wolfed a big bed. He's up on a hilltop right here. So he stands up, look at that. He's got a great view over everything. And again, this is an open spot, no switch planted there. Got an open pocket right next to it right here. So this is where they want to be in the switchgrass. So here's where my buck was bedded. Just a little high knoll right in the middle of the switchgrass. But definitely fun to watch him slowly and meticulously work through his bedding, which was over there, all the way up through here. And he stopped in this open pocket. I was up in the deer stand with my son right up there. About 300-yard shot right down into here, and he ended up running off that direction and died right in the woods there in a hinge cut bedding area. So yeah, December 2nd today, and the switch is still standing tall and proud here and on the northern half of Minnesota. Now there are years, I think last year we had an ice storm around this time and it folded the switch right over. But there isn't a grass out there that's going to stand up to snow or heavy wet snow and ice. It did tip over and it was down until it started melting in the spring. So switchgrass is not a year-round bedding option, and so don't plant it thinking it is. But there are years where it makes it through the entire deer season here. This year is looking like it could be one of those years. And there are years where it tips over around the beginning of December, late November. But it normally makes it through the rut here. It gives me another bedding option on our farm because different deer have different preferences. So I like to have a diversity of options. Here's a nice big bed right here. I like to have a bunch of different bedding options for the deer on our farm. And it has worked. Again, my favorite bedding will always be in the timber and the stuff we can do in the timber, but if you have the space to do it, switchgrass is a viable option. My thoughts with switchgrass are if you're in big timber country, your primary focus with it should be screening. There's not really a scenario in big timber country where I see it being a good option for bedding. If you're in mixed egg, like our farm is, we're kind of in that transition zone where we have, a good mix of egg, swamp, some hardwoods, some open fallow ground. If you have the space for it in that scenario, you can add switchgrass as a potential bedding option. But where it tends to shine the most is if you are in that big egg prairie country where there's just a ton of massive farms all around you, ton of open ground. If you add switchgrass in that scenario, you will see pretty good results because if there's no other cover around, they will definitely gravitate towards the cover that you create. And that's the benefit of switchgrass. You don't have to wait 10 years like I do with some of the conifers and things like that I'm planting. Switchgrass, you can have good viable bedding within a couple of years. So it's an option. It's just another tool in the toolbox. So don't let somebody tell you it's a terrible idea, you should never plant it for bedding, and don't let somebody tell you that it's a silver bullet that will always work for bedding. Just depends on your situation and the scenario that you got on your piece of ground but there are times where it will work. All right, that's all I got for today. Y'all take care. God bless.